It's been less than a month since President Biden took office, but already the executive orders and policies he's enacted are raising concerns among GOP lawmakers, experts, and Americans across the nation. Some of those include rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement and blocking construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. Here to discuss this further is the founder and executive director of Power the Future, Daniel Turner. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So first, let's start with the Paris Climate Agreement. After being inaugurated, Biden decided to rejoin the accord. You penned an op-ed at Real Clear Energy exposing the fallout of rejoining the Paris Climate Accord. Tell us more about that.
Thank you for pointing that out. And one of the problems of the Paris Climate Accord is that it sets up these globalist mandates that America has to follow, where many countries, particularly China and Russia, have ignored to follow these mandates. And so now, back as members of the Paris Accord, the U.S. will be forced to lower its emissions at a certain rate, a rate we didn't vote on, right? American citizens had no voice on this. It's a bunch of folks in Geneva and Brussels who make these numbers up. And in order to meet those mandates, we're going to punish the fossil fuel industry. And who that benefits is China. We're going to send a tremendous amount of our refining capability to China because they don't have any emissions mandates to follow. So we're weakening our energy industry, we're weakening our national security, all to appease this globalist cabal in Europe. And it really does not make any strategic sense for America.
In the Paris Climate Accord, it's a non-binding agreement. And as you pointed out, a lot of people, they're pointing fingers at China. Even India saying, well, wait a second, they're emitting CO2 emissions much more than the U.S. Switching gears now a little bit. In his first day in office, Biden also signed an executive order revoking the 2019 permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. We already know there's been repercussions with job losses and even union officials speaking out against the move. But what are some of the other consequences regarding this decision?
Yeah, this is really a tragic decision, and I've spoken to numerous pipeline workers. I've filmed a couple of them for our website. And if you are one of these 11,000 individuals, these last 3 weeks have been hard. You don't have a paycheck. You don't have health care benefits. So there is this tremendous suffering that he inflicted for no reason other than pure politics on these people. So the human toll is, of course, very serious and very concerning, and we as Americans should care about that. But like the Paris Climate Accords, there is a national security implication here. What we were doing for years is bringing oil from Canada, a reliable partner at a very good price, bringing their oil down to Texas for refining. Now, without the Keystone pipeline, Canada is going to look for alternatives. They'll probably send it west to their own ports and send it to China for refining, something I mentioned earlier, or they'll send it outside on the world market. And so now America is going to forego this constant stream of a reliable resource. And let's face it, we need oil. We still use oil. And this notion we're going to get away from oil in the next 50, 100 years is just unscientific. And it's quite frankly insulting and laughable. So if we're not going to buy it from Canada, where are we going to get oil from to meet our demand? Well, sadly, some of the other oil producing countries are not our friends. Venezuela, Russia, the Saudis, who you could argue yes or no as a partner, the Yemenis, the Omanis, right? So these are other countries that now we have to go into business with. We were energy independent for the last couple of years. Why are we giving this up? Why are we giving up any American sovereignty? It doesn't make sense.
And to your point, we even heard Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issue a rebuke, while even some Democrats, such as Democrat Senator Joe Manchin, penned a letter to Biden asking him to reverse the termination of the Keystone XL pipeline. And of course, as you mentioned, lots of repercussions regarding that. You also cite how experts believe China will outpace the U.S. in refining capabilities this year. What does this mean for America's energy sector?
Yeah, this is really concerning because I'm sure your viewers know this, but what comes out of the ground isn't anything that we can necessarily use. Crude oil has to go through a multi-stage refining process. And if we don't do it here in America, we're going to ship it elsewhere to be refined. Environmental laws, some of the mandates put forward by this new Biden administration are going to make it hard to refine in America. So if we refine elsewhere, then that means we are shipping our oil, our American oil, overseas with the hopes that it will return. Well, during the height of the pandemic, we had hopes that China would send personal protection equipment, medicines, pharmaceuticals. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Chinese communist leaders admitted it was a great bargaining chip that they wanted to use for leverage in trade negotiations. Now, that's very scary when we're talking about medicine and medical equipment. But what happens when it's oil, right? What happens if China is now refining our oil, which they are on pace to do? What happens when we send our crude there and we're waiting for the tankers to return? Are they going to use it as a bargaining chip as we watch our cars become useless, our jets stranded, et cetera? So again, we're giving up any sense of independence. Energy independence is leverage, it's strength, and it's national security. And the Biden administration has taken some very dangerous steps that weaken us.
And we already see China doing that with rare earth materials, which, of course, we need here. Based on what you've seen, we've seen Biden flip back and forth regarding his views on fracking. Do you think this is the progressive wing of the Democrat Party pushing him, or do you think this has been part of his agenda the whole time?
You know, that's a great question, because the Joe Biden who ran as president talked about a blue-collar Joe, middle-class Joe. He made an emphasis that he was a kid from Scranton who understood the struggles of working men and women. But his first couple weeks in office showed that that was either a big lie or he is being pushed hard by members of administration. We know to win, he had to win over the Bernie Sanders wing, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wing. The radical environmental left, Biden was not their first choice. But now they're stuck with him. So maybe he's trying to appease them, but I have a sneaking feeling Biden is not the moderate he has wanted us to believe. No moderate, if given something like the Keystone Pipeline decision by the chief of staff, by Vice President Harris, by whomever, no moderate says, I am not going to fire 11,000 Americans in the middle of a pandemic. That is the wrong thing to do. But he did it anyway. So I think this myth that Biden, just like the myth that he's a devout Catholic who sues nuns and loves to pay for abortion, I think he is the myth that he is a moderate who cares about blue-collar Americans. He has sold it to the media, and the media has done his part for 50 years to convince us he's a moderate, but he's not.
We'll have to see how all this plays out in the long term. As we just mentioned, he's not even a month in office. Again, Daniel Turner, the founder and executive director of Power the Future, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.